Very much. Very interesting question. I say very interesting because I've been studying China-US relations for a number of years, and I've written a couple of books on the subject. And exactly on this subject is the second volume in my series, and that looks at the exchanges between not just Kissinger, but other US officials and Chinese officials at the time. What they were looking to do was to end the war in Vietnam, primarily. This was President Nixon's initiative. He was determined. There were two reasons, really. The first one was, of course, the domestic reason. It was essential for the Nixon administration, inheriting the war from the Johnson administration, that Nixon had determined it was important for the USA to bring the boys home, and bring the boys home with honor. And they recognized that the war could not be ended without neutralizing Soviet support for the North Vietnamese. And to counteract the Soviet support for North Vietnamese, they needed to develop leverage. And although they were not aware of the fact that right then, in 1969-70, the Chinese leadership was also seeking ways of establishing contacts with the United States, because the Soviet Union had attacked China in two areas, one in what we call the Ussuri River or the Amur River, and in Xinjiang. And these are very serious threats. And so unbeknownst to each other, Nixon did not know what the Chinese were doing, and Mao did not know what Nixon was doing. They were both of them exploring their geopolitical circumstances. And both sides, quite interestingly, determined independently that the far enemy for China was the United States, was much less dangerous than the near enemy. For China, the near enemy was the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was actually determined to destroy China's nuclear weapon state. And they were preparing for this. They sought the Nixon administration's say-so, whether the Nixon administration would tolerate a surgical strike by Soviet forces on Chinese nuclear weapon sites. This was a very dangerous situation. The Chinese did not know about this, but the Americans knew this. And this is a time when coinciding interests, that is, against the Soviet Union, both sides decided that they needed to build some sort of clandestine bridges. And they were already talking in Warsaw. Ambassadorial meetings were taking place every month or every 6 weeks in Warsaw. These talks did not get very far, but Nixon instructed Kissinger to communicate with the Chinese. So first Kissinger tried via the French. This failed. Then next he went to the Romanians, the Poles, and a couple of other countries that I can't remember. Eventually, the Chinese responded when the messages were taken by the Pakistani head of government, then President Yahya Khan. It was only then that the Chinese were convinced that the Americans were sincere in trying to make contact with China, because US-China relations had been really bad, to the extent that both sides were preparing for war. So at that time, Pakistan served as a conduit for geopolitical purposes, serving both US and Chinese interests. Both China and the United States saw this as their responsibility to protect Pakistan.